Today, families were on the move again in Gaza, ordered to leave eastern Rafah ahead of a potentially devastating offensive. Tonight, people in Gaza had been celebrating the mere prospect of a ceasefire deal that could end their suffering. Some 1.4 million Palestinians, more than half of Gaza's population, are thought to be crammed into Rafah after fleeing Israel's offensive elsewhere in the Strip. The Israeli army has ordered around 100,000 of them to move to al-Mawazi on the coast, and what Israel has called an expanded humanitarian area. It also takes in part of Khan Yunis, much of which is rubble after an offensive there. But tonight, with Hamas saying it agrees a deal, let's get more from Kemi Nzerema, who joins me now in the studio. Kemi, dramatic developments just in the last few moments. What are you hearing?
The first thing to reiterate is that Israel so far says they haven't agreed to their side of this. That will change, one assumes, as we get more information. Let us just briefly go through what we know of what Hamas say they have agreed to. They released a statement to media recently. It's fundamentally a three-stage deal that will take place, in theory, over around 120 days. The first stage is that they release their hostages, 33 of them, in return for 800 prisoners. Hamas would call them hostages too. And the start of return of people to Gaza. The second phase, more swaps, so to speak, which could potentially include thousands of Palestinian prisoners. And the third stage, a release of all the bodies, and then an agreement of some kind to begin to rebuild Gaza. Clearly, people in Rafah were waiting for what they feared was the worst. And in the last few minutes, huge scenes and sighs of relief across that part of Gaza as news of this supposed agreement began to spread. Jubilant scenes in Rafah this evening, with 1 million or more people on tenterhooks, the threat of an imminent Israeli incursion looming, a glimmer of hope. Hamas said they'd accepted a ceasefire proposal. And maybe, just maybe, an end to this. The tiny body bags that have come to symbolize the Gazans caught with nowhere to go. The martyr, each one reads, and a name. Hani Kashta ibn Abu Libda. Children, babies, killed in a war that can't tell enemy from collateral damage.
What has he done to deserve this? He still hasn't seen anything in the world. He doesn't know Jews or Arabs. He doesn't know anything.
The IDF had been warning for some time they'd be coming to eastern Rafah. Get out, the leaflets warned. Gazans have been trapped in this deadly nightmare of cat and mouse for 7 months now. Few have any faith the place they were being moved on to by the coast would be any safer.
We fled death and destruction and came to Rafah only to find destruction here. Do they want to kill us here? We came seeking safety in Rafah. Where do they want to send us? Where are we to go?
I fled from Gaza City to central Gaza, from central Gaza to Rafah, and now they're threatening Rafah. They will commit massacres here in Rafah. It'll be a genocide.
Many Palestinians call this a genocide, but many Israelis fear genocide will come to them if they don't defeat Hamas. The political reality, a Hamas mortar attack yesterday in Kerem Shalom that killed 4 soldiers. Hopes of that ceasefire seem to disappear. Last night, Israel's Prime Minister, dependent on his far-right coalition, signalled he would take action in defiance of international calls for calm.
I say to the leaders of the world, no amount of pressure, no decision by any international forum will stop Israel from defending itself. As the Prime Minister of Israel, the one and only Jewish state, I pledge here today from Jerusalem on this Holocaust Remembrance Day, if Israel is forced to stand alone, Israel will stand alone.
What this meant for Gazans, grieving again as they prepared to flee again, stuck between the IDF and Hamas, who had tonight warned the Israelis an invasion would, quote, not be a picnic. Aid agencies said an invasion would be a catastrophe, but has diplomacy finally found a way to make this stop, at least for a little while? Arab nations and the EU had been begging Israel not to invade. Egypt hosted desperate emergency talks. This afternoon, President Biden had a direct call with Benjamin Netanyahu, and in the last few minutes, Hamas agreed to a deal.